We all know someone like Grace, don't we? You might even be sitting next to someone like Grace. So watch out. We know someone like Grace, someone that we'd like to maybe shake a little bit and say, oh, just lighten up, just give people a break. You can't just go through life and just write everybody off your list. And I know that you've been hurt and I know that you've been wronged, but you just need to forgive and forget and just move on in life. But most of the time, people don't, do they? It's because something's missing. It's the same thing, really, that's missing in the back seat of my car when my girls start arguing. It's the same thing that's missing in the Middle East, where there's conflict all the time. It's the same thing that's missing in a lot of marriages. Some of you are parents and your kids are struggling in their marriage and they come to you for sympathy, but what you really would like to say to them is just, move on. Just forgive and forget and move on with things. Maybe you are a child and your parents come to you and kind of talk badly about their spouse. Your mother is driving me nuts. Your dad's driving me nuts. And maybe as a child, you would want to say to them, come on, Mom or Dad, you've been married for 40 years, work it out. Just get along. Don't be so condescending. Learn to just get on with it. But the reason why that sometimes even people who've been married for a long time don't get along is because there's something missing. Now here's what's odd. It's easy for us to look at somebody else, look at another relationship, and see that there's something missing in that relationship. But when it comes to maybe the people that we are holding at arm's length, sometimes we feel very justified in holding our grudge. Because, we've just got a case. It's easy to see when something's missing, somebody else's relationship, but it's very difficult for us to see that many times the same ingredient is missing in our relationships. Here's something that bothers me as a pastor. This missing ingredient that we're going to talk about for the next couple of weeks, it's missing in many churches. And that's a sad thing. It was certainly missing in the church that I grew up in. We were just against everything. We were against the Equal Rights Amendment. We were certainly against rock and roll. That's the devil's music. We were against mixed race marriages. We were against carnivals, movies, liberals, Democrats. We were even against Disneyland. Oh my, someone said, oh my. And here's the thing, isn't it strange? Our mission was to reach people. Problem was, we just didn't like them. Come to our church if you can, manage to be strange as we are. There was just a missing ingredient in the church. The same ingredient that's missing in the back seat of my car, and in the Middle East, and in the relationships around us, and even in some of our relationships. But here's the thing. When this ingredient is missing, everything gets distorted and confused, and people say things and do things that later on they say, how could I have said that? How could I have done that? And it's real simple. When this small yet key essential ingredient is missing in our life, life just gets weird. It gets strange, and small things become big, big, big things. Now here's what's cool about Christmas. Christmas is about God sending in flesh and bone the missing ingredient. And this missing ingredient is simple, But it's also so powerful that it has the potential to take men and women who are at odds and bring them together. It's so powerful that it has the potential to bring fathers and sons, husbands and wives, and mothers and daughters together. It has the potential to mend hearts and to heal old wounds. It even has the potential to break down theological barriers between people and tear down racial divides between people. It literally has the power to heal the nations. It is the most powerful force because nothing shapes the human soul and the human heart like this missing ingredient we're going to talk about this morning. And here's what's cool. When Jesus walked on this earth, it so poured out of him that it threatened the people that didn't think that they needed, but it drew the masses to him who saw it as their only hope. The message of Christmas is that God saw what we needed the most in this missing ingredient, and he gave it to us in the form of his Son, Jesus Christ. If you have your Bibles, turn to the book of John. It's the 4th book in the New Testament, and we're going to read together the story of Jesus. Now, when Matthew and Luke tell this Christmas story, they tell about the angels and Mary and Joseph and the shepherds and the wise men. But when John begins his story of Jesus, we get the impression right up front that he is very anxious to say to us, hey, just in case you don't finish this whole book, I've got to let you know from the get-go what this book is all about. This isn't just a story about a man who came from God and just gave us more of the same. This is the story of a man sent from God that introduced us to something that was so completely different that it was a dividing line amongst people. People either completely loved him or hated him. He came from God, but he was not what we expected. And that's why John says to us in his gospel, right up front, I want you to know the significance of what happened on that Christmas morning when God sent his Son into this world. He sent us the missing ingredient. John chapter 1, verse 14, here's what it says. The Word, that's God, became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Now these are really powerful words because John is saying the God that lived in the Holy of Holies, the God who lived in the Ark of the Covenant, the God of the Old Testament who was this touch me and you die God, that God has shown up right here on earth and we have seen his glory, John says. No way, John. Yes way. Well, tell us what it was like. He says, we have seen the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, and here it is. Don't miss this. Here's what it was like. He was full of grace and truth. He was full of grace and truth. Oh, wait a minute. Time out, John. You mean judgment and truth? No. You mean law and truth? Mm-mm. You mean you better watch out, you better not cry in truth. Don't you mean I'm going to get you in truth? And John said no. You see, that's what took us all by surprise. God showed up in a body and he was nothing like we thought he would be. Because he was just full of, he just overflowed with, from every fiber of his being, every time we turned around, we sensed grace and truth. And that just took us completely by surprise. And some of them said, well, John, maybe you've got the wrong guy. You know there are a lot of wannabe messiahs around. Are you sure you got the right one? I mean, grace and truth, that really doesn't sound like God to us.